Lesson. Today we're going to be talking about writing fractions as decimals. Now this is something that you guys have already learned before, but we're recapping it so that we can go a little further. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about terminating decimals. So there's different type of fractions, or decimals. There's terminating decimals and repeating decimals. Now terminating decimals is when you divide the numerator by the denominator and you eventually get a remainder of 0. So basically the fractions, or the decimal stops once you divide. So once you divide and you eventually end, so it doesn't go on and on. Now repeating decimals, on the other hand, are decimals that repeat and never end. We use bar notation to basically make it shorter. So instead of writing 0.3333333333, we use bar notation to help us out. Now, so basically a bar notation means that you draw a little line above the number or set of numbers that repeat. So in our fraction, or in our decimal, 0.333, our 3 is repeating, so we'd write 0.3 with a line or a bar above the 3 to show that the 3 goes on forever. Now, in this example, we have 6.8555. The 5 is the only number repeats. The 8 doesn't. So you'd write 6.8, then 5 with a bar above it. In this example, we have 0.54545454 goes on forever. So basically our 54 goes on forever. So that's why we put the bar above that. Now, we're going to be talking about changing fractions into both terminating and repeating decimals. So how do we do that? Just a little refresher, you just divide the numerator by the denominator and then you'll get your fraction. So if you divide 3 divided by 8, you'll get some sort of decimal because 8 doesn't go into 3, so we're going to have to add a decimal and a 0 and then go on until it ends, so which would be 0.375. Alright, let's go ahead and do some examples. Okay, let's look at example number 1. We have the fraction 4/5, and we're going to change it from a fraction into a decimal, which means we need to divide. So we're going to divide 4 divided by 5. So how many times does 5 go into 4? It doesn't. So that means we are going to be adding a decimal, which is how we're going to get a decimal, and add a 0. So how many times does 5 go into 40? It goes in 8 times, and then you'll get 40, subtract 0. Okay, so we have a terminating decimal because it ends. So now we need to go ahead and pull up our decimal point, and we have the decimal 0.8, which is our answer. Alright, let's go ahead and look at example number 2. Now we have a mixed number. A mixed number is when you have your whole number and a fraction together. So now how do you do it with a mixed number? So when we have a whole number, this is basically saying it's 2 and 1/4. And we're going to write it like this. 2 and 1/4. So basically we're going to be adding a 2 plus whatever 1 divided by 4 is. So let's go ahead and do 1 divided by 4. We're going to have to add a 0. How many times does 4 go into 10? We have twice. Get 8 minus, you're going to get 2, 0, and then it goes in 5 times, 20, 0. Then we'll pull up our decimal place, which is 0.25. So basically, instead of writing a 1/4 here, we're going to erase it and replace it with the decimal form, 0.25. And if you add them up, you're going to get 2.25. So 2 and 25/100ths is going to be our decimal. Alright, let's do the same thing for this example with 4 and 3/4. So we are going to do 4 and 3/4. So now we're going to have to figure out what is 3/4 in decimal form. So we can add it to the 4 and we'll get our final answer. So let's go ahead and divide. So how many times does 4 go into 3? It goes in 0 times, so we're going to have to add a decimal. How many times does 4 go into 30? And so we'll have to look at it and think, well, 6 times 4 gives you 24. Can we go any more? 4 times 7 is going to give you 28. So we're going to have to go 7 times. 28, subtract, get 2, add a 0, pull it down. 4 goes into 25 times. So we're going to get 20, subtract, and get 0. So our decimal is 0.75. So we're going to replace the fraction form with the decimal form. 75. We're going to add it together and get 4 and 75/100. And that is our decimal form. Let's go ahead and do another example up here. We have 7/9. So we're going to go ahead and divide. So let's go ahead and divide 7 divided by 9. So now we need to think, how many times does 9 go into 7? We have 0 times. So we're going to have to add our decimal in a 0. How many times does 9 go into 70? It will have to be 7 times, because 7 times 9 is going to give you 63. And when you subtract, you're going to go ahead and get 7. And then you're going to add a 0 and pull down your 0. How many times does 9 go into 70? 7 times, 63, subtract, get 7. And we are all of a sudden seeing a pattern. This is basically going to keep giving you 7 each time as a remainder, which means we are going to have a repeating decimal. So this 7 is just going to go on and on and on. So let's go ahead and write it in bar notation so we don't have to write an infinity amount of 7s. So we're going to write 0.7, and we're going to put a bar over 7 because that's the number that repeats over and over and over again. Alright, let's go ahead and do number 5. So now we have a negative fraction, a -5/6, which means that our decimal is going to be negative once we divide it out. So let's go ahead and divide. 5 divided by 6. 6 cannot go into 5, so we're going to add a decimal and a 0. How many times does 6 go into 50? Let's see, we have 6 times 10 is 60. 6 times 9 is going to give you 54, which is still too much. So 6 times 8 is going to give you 48. So 6 times 8, 48. Subtract, you're going to get 2, add a 0, pull it down. How many times does 6 go into 20? So we have 6 times 2, which gives you 12. 6 times 3, which gives you 18. So we have 18. Subtract, you're going to get 2. So we're going to start getting a pattern. So it's going to be, this 3 is going to repeat over and over again, because as soon as we go again, we're going to have to put it in 3 times to get 18 and over. So our decimal is going to be a -0.83, and then the 3 is the only part that's repeating. It's not 838383, it's just 833333. So the 3 repeats. Alright. The last thing we're going to do is compare a fraction and a decimal. So this little symbol right here basically means we're going to put a greater than, less than, or equal to sign. So in order to do this, we need to have both of these in the same form. You can either change this to a fraction, or you can change this to a decimal, either or. But if they are both fractions, remember you have to have the same denominator to be able to compare. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this one into a decimal so we can compare them. So I'm going to write 3 divided by 5. 5 cannot go into 3, so I'm going to add a decimal and a 0. 5 goes into 30. It goes in exactly 6 times. So we subtract and we're going to get 0. So this means that we are going to have a terminating decimal because it ends. So basically now we're comparing 6/10 and 75/100. So which one is going to be greater? So let's look at the place values. So we have nothing in the ones place. So let's go ahead and look in the tens place. And 7 is greater than 6. So that means that this decimal is bigger than this one. Alright? Go ahead and make sure that all of your notes are done, that you've taken all the notes on the front side, you've watched these examples. If you got stuck on a few things, rewind and watch them again. Also, there are some examples in your textbook, so you can go back and look at those as well. And as always, I'll answer your questions tomorrow. Let's go ahead and look at some on your own questions. Alright, you have 4 problems to do for me. These first 3 problems, I want you to go ahead and change the fraction to a decimal. And this last problem, go ahead and figure out if the fraction's less than, greater than, or equal to. So put the correct symbol there. Alright, good luck. We'll see what you get tomorrow.